Okay, I'll share my screen, which is basically the presentation. Okay, let me share the entire. Okay, so let's start. So the topic today, the topic title is consciousness, perspectives from artificial intelligence and Bhagavatam. In today's talk, I'm not discussing much from Bhagavatam, but from Bhagavad Gita, because I plan to do it as series of discussions. So in today's discussion, I'm just sticking to Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so study of consciousness. So consciousness is a topic of study which is very popular amongst intellectuals of all times, starting from our known history, known human history, and even today, it is a very important topic and very uh, much debated topic. Many people, they want to describe consciousness, they want to study consciousness, they have um, their own experiences about this topic of consciousness. So consciousness is a topic studied by all intellectuals, including theologists and philosophers of all times. So earlier it was considered as a topic of theologists and philosophers, while mainstream science, but when we say mainstream science, I mean physics, mathematics, chemistry, biology, all these, if we call them as mainstream science, they were considering consciousness as not an important topic or as an epiphenomena or something which they didn't deal with. But now, with the recent advances in science and technology, its importance is being perceived in mainstream science. The topic of consciousness today has become very popular, and it is talked about in even in the mainstream science. Like if you go to physics, physicists have their own way of studying consciousness, or their own perspectives, or their own kind of questions which they ask about consciousness, and their own way of finding answers on these questions. So this is a famous physicist, Roger Penrose, who got Nobel Prize this year, last year, and he has written books and given talks and done a lot of work on consciousness. Although he's a physicist, but he talks about consciousness all the time. So, and there are many journals which have come up recently, and where people from all different backgrounds, from computer science, from physics, from AI and technology, everybody, they write papers and they submit their research to these journals. Now, just to make you aware of this field of AI, what is the meaning of AI? So AI has created a big name in the modern uh, in the contemporary world. I'll just show you some videos which give you an idea of what was thought of as unimaginable in the past. Today, it has been achieved by AI. So I'll just show you this video from Hanson Robotics. They have made a robot called Sophia, and you can see how wonderful this robot is. So this robot can talk like humans. There is no volume or no audio here. I don't know, but okay. So it can approach people. It can find where are people, and what it can talk to them as human beings. It can lead them to right direction if they are looking for something. So you can see it can do. It is difficult. So means we are going in a direction where it will be difficult to distinguish whether it's a robot or a real human being. Right. So this was one example of AI, uh, which is very impressive. But not only in specialized like malls or some specialized venues. Even in our homes, we can see examples of robot. This is in America. A Roomba robot is very popular, and we can see one video. Okay, so it's very impressive, right? How robot can means basically AI is already into our lives, but now this is something even more which created a big news in I think 2015, 15 or 16, I don't remember, maybe in 17, that Google made this AlphaGo DeepMind, which is a company of Google. They made a machine which can play chess or even a game which is even more difficult than chess. You can say consciousness means because we can play games, we can think. But if you think consciousness is just about thinking, then this is already being done by the game of Go, the machine which plays the game of Go. Okay, so basically this it created a very it created a lot of news in recent times that how machines can be so powerful, even things which were unimaginable today, the machines are already doing it, already doing those things. Uh, okay, so perspectives. Okay, let us come to our main question now. So what is consciousness? So we saw how things which we considered only humans could do or only conscious beings could do, today even the machines are able to do. So these are the, so when I was there in the talk given by Demis Hassabis, who is the mastermind behind this AlphaGo. He is the CEO or the director of the AI labs of Google Brain. And he's the one who conceived the idea of AlphaGo and made this software. He was leading the entire team. So he came to Oxford and I was there and he gave a talk, which I attended in the talk. He was explaining about this game of Go, AlphaGo, and just towards the end of his talk, he told that these questions about consciousness and about what are human rights and what are machine rights and what are ethics, these all play a very important role. And he was saying that it will be a very good time now to start thinking about these questions more seriously. So, what I'm saying is this topic of consciousness has become even more lively with the recent advances in technology, and it has become even more relevant to talk about these things. Okay, so this is some perspectives. Okay, so I was just with this goal in mind, like how do we study consciousness from different perspectives? I did a kind of research, and uh, I have found out some popular scientists and some popular articles on consciousness uh, from different people like philosophers, AI scientists, etc. And some of them I am presenting here so that we get a, a perspective how people think about consciousness. So philosophers, so this is an article in Physics World, which is a physics magazine, very popular physics magazine. And they say, this is one article which says, consciousness appears to arise naturally as a result of brain maximizing its information content. Okay, and they call it as entropy, that brain is trying to maximize the information content, and entropy is a measure of information. Now, many things are under the cover in this definition. So what is brain, and what is information content, and why does brain want to maximize information content, right? So these questions are under the cover, but okay, so this article is giving one perspective that maybe consciousness is related to brain maximizing its information content. But as I told, that from my what I understood from this article, many things were under the rug. And then there is this same article which goes on to say, Perez Velazquez, he's a scientist, and the colleagues argue that consciousness could simply be an emergent property of a system. So they say, okay, it's an emergent property. Basically, like let's say the brain is made up of cells and neurons and like other chemicals, and consciousness is just an emergent property that when the brain is trying to maximize information exchange and therefore entropy, and since doing so aids the survival of the brain's bearer by allowing them to better model their environment. This was the kind of line which I thought it brings out many perspectives on consciousness, many more um, uh, properties of consciousness. That okay, consciousness is so why is brain trying to maximize consciousness? So the answer is in this line I found in this line, that he says, the article says that since doing so aids the survival of the brain's bearer. So brain is trying to maximize information so that the survival of the bearer is enhanced by allowing them to better model their environment. So it's related to survival. Then now survival is, again, what do you mean by survival, right? It's a circular definition. Survival is related to consciousness. Like when we have consciousness, we say the person is surviving, but then they say consciousness is an aid to survival. So I was not very impressed with this definition, or this understanding of consciousness. Means many things are unclear, but okay. So this is a nice article. So person is thinking some very good thoughts are there in this article. Okay. Then another some more philosophers. So Dennett is a philosopher. He's a I think professor in Tufts University in Boston, and so they say uh, consciousness may be so they say it's a thought. Consciousness may be a state which arises in a system that can think about its own or other people's thought, that is in a system capable of second or higher order thoughts. So they say, okay, consciousness means a system is there, let's say brain is there, it can think about not only itself but also other people's thought and make what do you say, and make inferences on what others are thinking based on their actions or something like that. So this is also a very nice perspective on consciousness. But then again, many things are still under the cover, that why are we trying to infer other states, or what is driving me to infer other states? So, but okay, still a nice perspective that consciousness is a kind of thought or ability to think about what others are thinking. Then next perspective, this is a journal called Scientific American. It's a magazine, a very popular magazine in America. Okay, and I can see Kabir is doing some painting on the screen. I have to delete this painting. Okay, so consciousness. Okay, so this is another perspective from some other scientists or some other um, um, articles. They say by consciousness, they call it as a subjective feeling. I mean, the quality inherent in any one experience. For instance, the delectable taste of Nutella. Nutella is a kind of eatable. The sharp sting of an infected tooth, the slow passage of time when one is bored, or the sense of vitality and anxiety just before a competitive event. Okay, so this person, his perspective on consciousness is that it is something like a subjective feeling. For example, when I have an exam, I feel anxious, I feel anxiety, and if I have pain in my tooth, I feel that pain. So consciousness means these subjective feelings. This is also a very good perspective. Another perspective on consciousness, that it is related to a subjective feeling. I'm feeling it. So, but still, it is not telling what exactly is the origin of consciousness, or so. But it is a nice perspective that it is a subjective, or it is the ability to feel something subjective. Okay, so you can see how even in modern science now, these subjectiveness has come into picture. Earlier it was considered science has to be objective, but now the what an individual is feeling, that also can be studied within science. So it is a very different from what people used to think earlier in maybe Newton's time, or um, earlier uh, uh, be, science which was a few decades ago. Okay, now another perspective on consciousness from AI perspective. AI means artificial intelligence. So because when they say, okay, human beings are there, which who are very good in many things, and then machines are there, which are also now becoming more and more smart as technology is advancing. So what is the limit? Can the machines overtake humans at some time? So consciousness is very important. So the study of consciousness is very important. That how are we, where are we heading to in our research and technology? So now, okay, so this is a perspective from a cognitive psychologist. So he says, is it the ability to predict? So consciousness means, so remember what we saw in the past. We saw consciousness was related to brain trying to maximize information, or it was related to a subjective feeling, or it was related to some thoughts. And now it is another perspective that consciousness is the ability to predict what is going to come. So he says, I suggest that consciousness arises as a result of brain's continuous attempts at predicting not only the consequences of its actions on the world or on other agents, but also the consequences of activity in one cerebral region on activity in other regions. By this account, the brain continuously and unconsciously learns to redescribe its own activity to itself. So developing system of meta representations of that characterize and qualify the target first order representation. Okay, so sorry for the very technical words being used here, but okay, if I zoom out and I can say in this, the gist of this slide which I want to present is that consciousness means the brain is trying to predict all the time. The activities outside the brain or activities within the brain. So it is the ability to predict. Then there's another perspective which says, this is from Schmidhuber. He's the, people say he's like a father of neural networks, very old researcher, and he has done lots of fundamental research in neural networks, which are very popular these days. So all the AI and deep learning, it's the basis is neural networks, and Schmidhuber is the person who made some very good neural networks in the in very early times of neural networks. Okay, so this, he says, because it's a recurrent network, it can learn to predict the future to a certain extent in the form of regularities with something called predictive coding. Okay, he's saying that these networks are learning how to predict the future, and as the data is as the data is coming in through the interaction with the environment, this unsupervised model network learns to discover new regularities or symmetries or repetitions over time. It can learn to encode the data with fewer computational resources. So what used to be conscious during learning becomes automated and subconscious over time. So, okay, so basically the gist is, he's saying that it is the ability to predict, but not just predict, but also efficiently predict. So we can minimize the amount of effort required to predict something over time. So how is it possible? We are learning from the new observations. Let's say I go to school and I find many new things, and I'm able to learn all those things, and over a period of time those things become very natural. For example, if somebody asks me to construct a sentence when I was very small as a child, it was very difficult for me. I had to think, okay, what will come after this, what will come after that. But now as a grown-up individual, I can speak fluently some language. So it's just like we go to learn a new language, so we have to think a lot in the beginning. What is the meaning of one? What do we call one in this language? Let's say I'm learning German. What is one called in German? I have to think a lot. But once uh, I'm trained up in that language, I know it. Then it becomes so natural. I just able to speak it fluently without any conscious thinking. Um, so this is what Schmidhuber says, that you are not only predicting efficiently. The meaning of consciousness is not just the ability to predict efficiently, but also to learn from new observations and make it more and more efficient over time. Okay, and here is some extreme claims from Schmidhuber and others. So he says, the computer scientist Schmidhuber, also known as father of modern AI, claims that he had rudimentary conscious machines in his lab already since 1990s. So he says, oh, we already have conscious machines. We already have machines who are conscious like humans. The architecture of these deep neural networks already has almost everything required for some sort of machine consciousness to evolve. Whether it will happen by accident or scientists will trigger its emergence with their attempts to improve networks performance is not important any longer. So he says that these deep neural networks or the AI, it has everything which we need to make a conscious machine. So basically, to simulate consciousness or to make consciousness, we already have the ingredients. It is just a matter of time how we arrange them and make a conscious machine, or we make another human being, or make another conscious being. It's just a matter of time, but we already have all the ingredients. Okay, this is an extreme claim, and I don't agree with it. We will see maybe in coming weeks, because maybe not today. It's very technical, but yeah, I mean, it's a lot of hand waving here and many extreme claims. Okay, now this is more interesting. Is it scary? So some people say consciousness is really scary. What does that mean? In the modern vernacular, what we can say is the first human level AGI. AGI means, okay, you can think of it as like a machine which is as good as humans. A first human level artificial general intelligence will be the last invention that humanity needs to make. So this person is saying that we should not make conscious machines or machines which have consciousness. Why? Because if once they come in, then they will overtake us in every field. They will become so intelligent that they will overpower humanity and humanity will not be able to survive. So he says this human level AGI can then reprogram itself and can modify its own mind and can make itself into a yet smarter machine. So he says, though this research is very dangerous. And also, you have heard the name of Elon Musk. Elon Musk is the world's richest person now, and he's the one who made Tesla car and many other projects. So he also said that this AGI or human level artificial intelligence, it is more dangerous than even nuclear weapons because it is so um, it is so scary that it can overpower even humans. Okay, now what we are seeing here is okay, so these were different perspectives. So just recap what we saw. So how do we define consciousness? We saw some people said consciousness is from information theory perspective, brain is trying to maximize the information. And some people say some other perspective is that consciousness is the ability to predict. Somebody says it is not just the ability to predict, but also to do it very efficiently and also to learn from new inputs. And somebody says it is the ability to it's ability to feel something subjective, that oh, I am hungry, or I am feeling pain, or I am feeling anxious. And then somebody else says maybe you can write on chat window if you want what you remember from different perspectives. Another perspective is it is the ability to predict and to feel and to model the world around us, like that. So we saw various perspectives, and so similarly it's very useful to see the perspectives from Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so the most scary ones were, okay, that consciousness is already there in our labs, and very soon we will have machines which will be more intelligent than human beings, and they will overpower humanity. Basically, they'll become so intelligent that they will reprogram themselves to overpower humanity. Okay, on the other hand, we see some perspectives from Bhagavad Gita, which I consider as very scientific and equally important. That these perspectives, today I'll be discussing just gist of it very briefly, but hopefully over the next weeks we will be able to see how some of those questions, not some actually, even if an intelligent person reads Bhagavad Gita, who knows what are the questions from current AI and current science, they can read Bhagavad Gita from a perspective, from basically seeking answers to those questions. And Gita has a very nice perspective on consciousness, and using that model, one can approach these questions and try to answer them in a very pertinent way. Okay, so now I'm coming to the perspective of Bhagavad Gita. So the question is, what is consciousness? Okay, so Bhagavad Gita does not describe only we as conscious beings. Bhagavad Gita says consciousness is, so there is Ishvara, who is supremely conscious, and there is Jiva, who is minutely conscious, and then there is Prakriti, who is not conscious. And then these Jiva and Prakriti are energies of Ishvara, and Jiva is the superior energy because it is conscious, and Prakriti is inferior energy because it is not conscious. So Bhagavad Gita gives a clear this perspective that, so we have unconscious things around us and we have conscious beings around us, or we ourselves are conscious beings. So we both are energies of Ishvara, Krishna, who is supremely conscious. Okay, I will read this this paragraph from Introduction to Bhagavad Gita. So this says, the position of Ishvara, the Supreme Lord, is that of supreme consciousness. So Gita is telling, position of Ishvara is that of supreme consciousness, and the jivas or the living entities, being parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, are also conscious. So we are also conscious because we are parts and parcel of Krishna. Basically, the origin of our consciousness is Krishna's consciousness. Both the living entity and the material nature are explained as Prakriti. We both are energies, but one of the two, the Jiva, is conscious, the other, that is the Prakriti, is not. So both are Prakriti. Jiva is the superior energy and the matter is the inferior energy. And that is the difference. Therefore, Jiva Prakriti is called superior because Jiva has consciousness, which is similar to the Lord's, and Lord is supreme consciousness. However, one should not claim that the Jiva is also supremely conscious. The living entity cannot be supremely conscious at any stage of his perfection, and the theory that he can be so is a misleading theory. Conscious he may be, but he is not perfectly or supremely conscious. Okay, so Bhagavad Gita is very clear in this. This that Krishna or the Ishvara is supremely conscious and Jiva is minutely conscious, but both are conscious, and then there is matter which is unconscious. So this is the ontology we are explaining. Bhagavad Gita is told. Now, from this perspective, from this ontology, Bhagavad Gita can answer, or Bhagavad Gita presents answers to different questions which we may ask. About observations. So how science is done, basically, we have some observations and we explain them with our models or with our concepts. So this is the basic premise of Bhagavad Gita, that Ishvara, Jiva, Prakriti, and then how this explains the observations which we make, so that we understand things in proper perspective. Okay, so now digging further about the consciousness, Gita says consciousness can be of two types. So one is the pure consciousness and other is contaminated consciousness. Contaminated consciousness means the material consciousness. So what is pure consciousness? Okay, so what is contaminated consciousness? So what we are experiencing basically is contaminated consciousness. It has two traits. I am the creator and I am the enjoyer. And pure consciousness has the trait, like what is basically, if my consciousness is not contaminated by matter, it is pure, then the trait will be, I am a co-operator of Krishna. Krishna is the enjoyer and I am co-operator. So Ishvara is the enjoyer, he is the creator, and I am cooperating him, and in this way I have a relationship with him. So this is Bhagavad Gita's clear-cut definition of ontologies. Okay, so Gita says what we are experiencing today is contaminated consciousness, and once the contamination is gone, the pure consciousness will be of this nature. We don't experience it right now, but of course once we become pure, then we will experience. What is this consciousness? This is again text from Introduction to Bhagavad Gita. What is this consciousness? This consciousness is I am. Now see the very nice perspective on consciousness, that consciousness is not just power to predict, those are also true, but this is consciousness is I am, the sense of existence, I am. Okay, then what am I? In contaminated consciousness, I am means I am the Lord of all I survey, I am the enjoyer. The world revolves because every living being thinks that he is the Lord and creator of the material world. Material consciousness has two psychic divisions. One is that I am the creator and the other is that I am the enjoyer. But actually the Supreme Lord is both the creator and enjoyer, and the living entity, being part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, is a cooperator. He's created and enjoyed. For instance, so see, when some topic is explained in an abstract way, it is difficult to understand. That is why analogies are given, or analogy means a real life example or an observation which has similar relationships as there in the conceptual model. So our conceptual, that okay, Krishna is supremely conscious, the creator and enjoyer, and we are cooperators. So this can be explained in this analogy, that just like a machine is there, so a part of the machine cooperates with the whole machine. Similarly, a part of the body cooperates with the whole body. Hands, legs, eyes, and so on are the parts of the body, but they are not actually the enjoyers. The stomach is the enjoyer. The legs move, the hands supply food, the teeth chew. All the parts of the body are engaged in satisfying the stomach, because the stomach is the principal factor that nourishes the body's organization. So if I have food, my hands will work hard to earn food. My legs will work hard to find to buy food, and then hands and eyes will cooperate to cook everything, and then finally feed everything to the stomach. And once it reaches the stomach, then whole body is nourished. So the hands will not say, oh, see, I did so much hard work, why should I give all the food to the stomach? I will enjoy on my own. Then that is not possible, right? So that is the meaning, that how hands are cooperating and ultimately giving to the stomach, and stomach is maintaining everybody. So similarly, Krishna is maintaining everybody and we are cooperating. Okay, so this is one meaning of consciousness, that this is one perspective on consciousness, that consciousness means the sense of existence. And now existence means for what? So if I'm existing, so am I the creator? Am I the enjoyer? So no, Krishna is the creator, he's the enjoyer, and my consciousness has to be dovetailed with Krishna, and I have to cooperate. Okay, so in the interest of time, I will not read further, but it is further analogies are given to explain the relationship, this relationship of cooperation between Ishvara, the supreme consciousness, and Jiva, the minute consciousness. Okay, now another perspective, that now what is consciousness? So consciousness is also a sense of awareness. Now, how is this? So like when you see Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad Gita does not talk about just one observation. It talks everything in terms of that bigger picture, that Krishna or Ishvara is there and Jiva is there. And this concept of consciousness, how do we understand it as a complete concept? So how does it apply to Krishna? How does it apply to Jiva? So that is why most all the answers are okay. In Bhagavad Gita, how all the some participants. Okay. Okay, so consciousness, this is another perspective, that it is a sense of awareness, but now how is that different in Jiva and Ishvara? So that it is also different because in the both, because Jiva is only conscious of one body, like I only know if I am hungry, if there is pain in my body, if my finger has some gloves on it, but Ishvara is aware of all the bodies. There's a fundamental difference between the consciousness of Jiva and consciousness of Ishvara from the perspective of awareness. The distinction of the Jiva and Ishvara will be explained in the 13th chapter of Gita. The Lord is Kshetrajna, means he is conscious, and the living being is also Kshetrajna, but the living being is conscious of his particular body, whereas the Lord is conscious of all the bodies. Because he lives in the heart of every living being, he's conscious of the psychic movements of particular jivas. We should not forget this. So Gita is very clear in terms of this bigger picture of consciousness, that do not mistake that consciousness is just one. No, consciousness also is of various kinds. There is pure consciousness, there is contaminated consciousness, and then Krishna is always pure consciousness, whereas Jiva is originally pure consciousness, but he is also affected by contaminated consciousness, and most of us are in contaminated consciousness. So Paramatma is living in everyone's heart as Ishvara, or the controller, and that he is giving directions for the living entity as to act as he desires, and the living entity forgets what to do. First of all, he makes a determination to act in a certain way, and then he's entangled in the actions and reactions of his own karma. So okay, now my consciousness is very limited and I forget. So if you remember, consciousness was also related to the ability to predict, right? That includes memory and intelligence, right? You have ability to predict, you have intelligence, and you have memory. But that was a trait of consciousness which we saw earlier. Now the same trait is being discussed in Bhagavad Gita, that I, living entity, have the tendency to forget. My predictions go wrong. My ability to predict fails in many places, but Krishna, his ability to predict does not fail. Because his models are perfect, his memory is perfect, his intelligence is perfect. So in this way, the perspective is given. And so first of all, Jiva makes, okay, and we are entangled, and then after giving up this one type of body, he enters into another type of body, and as we take off and put on clothes. So this is very interesting, that how uh, I, as a living entity who has contaminated consciousness, how that contaminated consciousness is now uh, uh, getting uh, is changing over time. It is also making me. Uh, it is basically changing my sense of identity, right? Consciousness is I am. We saw this definition. Consciousness is I am. But this material consciousness, my sense of who I am, this always keeps on changing, just like we are putting on different clothes in different times, right? Today I'm wearing white clothes and I'm thinking, oh, I'm white. And tomorrow I'm wearing black clothes and thinking, oh, I'm black. So my sense of who I am, which is also we saw as the definition of consciousness, it is always changing when I am in material consciousness or contaminated consciousness. But in a pure consciousness, this will not be there. That will be eternal. So we see one more trait of consciousness in this, that pure consciousness is eternal. It is changeless. But whereas contaminated consciousness is always changing. So you see, consciousness is such an interesting, such a deep topic that so many perspectives, they are not sufficient. It is so. Actually, I just, this reminds me of one statement of Feynman. Feynman says, Richard Feynman is a Nobel laureate and very popular physicist, and he used to say in his lectures that even a small electron, nobody understands it, because we can study the electron from so many perspectives, and anybody who says I understand the electron, he's telling a lie. He doesn't understand physics, because one small electron is so many perspectives one can have on it. Similarly, here we see consciousness is even more subtle, even more nuanced than the electron. So this is even more um, uh, rich, and the description is even so much rich that people have been trying for millennia, and still they are not able to. But what is, okay, now you may ask the question, then why are we studying consciousness if we cannot understand it? But the more we study it, the more it is exciting us, the more it is uh, giving us a sense of satisfaction. It is giving us a sense of wisdom, that, oh, really, this is a new perspective, this is a new trait of consciousness which I just discovered. Oh, consciousness also has this trait. Okay, now this is a very important another question. What is the origin of consciousness? So Bhagavad Gita says, okay, so is it an emergent property produced by matter? So Bhagavad Gita says, no, it is not an emergent property. Okay, the pure consciousness is not generated from matter, but material consciousness is affected by matter. So pure consciousness covered by matter is material consciousness, and certainly matter is affecting it. For example, if I see a nice car, immediately I get the thoughts of buying it, having it. So I'm experiencing those thoughts, but those thoughts are because of material consciousness. It is affected by matter, right? I'm affected by the presence of that car. So I will say, oh, my consciousness has changed. But actually, pure consciousness is not changed, but the material consciousness has changed. So Prabhupada gives the analogy that just like you have colored glasses. So if I wear red glasses, I see everything red. If I wear yellow glasses, I see everything yellow. So my vision has not changed. My eyes have not changed, but my perception has changed because of this covering. So this is the difference. Okay, pure consciousness is not generated from matter. Material consciousness is affected by matter. But Krishna's consciousness, like Bhagavad Gita always talks about Jiva and Ishvara. So Krishna's consciousness is never material. Krishna's consciousness is always pure. So Krishna never sees things in perverted ways. He never sees things in illusioned ways. He's always seeing in the right perspective. Okay. So in the interest of time, I will not read the black part, and I will read just the red sentences. It is not that consciousness is generated by the association of matter. This is Bhagavad Gita. That is a mistaken idea. So Bhagavad Gita is very clear that consciousness is not generated from matter. It is not an epiphenomenon. It is not an emergent property, the pure consciousness. So the theory that consciousness develops under certain circumstances of material combination is not accepted in Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so Gita is very clear that consciousness is not generated by some material combination. So this rules out, okay, saying that computers are conscious, right? Because computers are made up of material combination. But if they are conscious, then means okay. If we say they are conscious, then we are just trying to mimic some traits which look like consciousness. Okay, I think this needs further discussion, so I will not go into too much depth there. Okay, so further, consciousness may be pervertedly reflected by the covering of material circumstances, just as light reflected through colored glass may appear to be of a certain color, but the consciousness of the Lord is not materially affected. So, okay, our consciousness, which is when it is materially contaminated, then it is definitely affected by matter. It is affected just like light is, when it passes through colored glass, it appears to be of certain color, but originally light is of different color. So similarly, our consciousness gets affected, but consciousness of the Lord is not affected. So, what example? I can give more examples. For example, we see sometimes in the broad day, sometimes there is broad daylight and there is a lot of sun, but sometimes we don't see the sun because clouds are covering the sun. So sun is there, of course, but clouds are covering. That's why we are not able to see the sun. So what is the way? How do we see the sun? When the clouds are removed, when the clouds go away, then we see the sun again clearly. Similarly, so Gita explains, we are covered by material contamination, and once that is gone, then we see pure consciousness, we experience pure consciousness. But as long as we are materially contaminated, so now what is this material contamination? So we will discuss in our further discussions. Okay, so I will just read this one. Our activities have to be purified, and purified activities are called bhakti. Activities in bhakti appear to be like ordinary activities, but they are not contaminated. An ignorant person may see that a devotee is working or acting like an ordinary man, but such a person with a poor fund of knowledge does not know that the activities of the devotee or of the Lord are not contaminated by impure consciousness or matter. They are transcendent to three modes of nature. We should know, however, that at this point, our consciousness is contaminated. So what does this mean? Okay, so we are contaminated by three modes of nature. Three modes of nature are, okay, we will have a separate discussion on that. Okay, so but we are experiencing, okay, so what is the meaning of contaminated consciousness? It means we are experiencing things which are not our real self. I'm experiencing things which are not um, uh, which are not because of pure consciousness, but which are because of matter. Like when I see a beautiful car, immediately thought is induced that, oh, I want to possess that car. So that is um, now, okay, this is also another question. Is it because of pure consciousness or because of contaminated consciousness? So so this is because of contaminated consciousness. How it is so, Bhagavad Gita has answered. Bhagavad Gita explains this. But then, how do I know whether this is because of pure consciousness or contaminated consciousness? Okay, in contaminated state, it is difficult to tell. Somebody is in pure consciousness, he can tell, okay, this is pure consciousness. But okay, I can still study a trait of it. Is it a permanent thought or is it a temporary thought? Okay, I think I have to ask. I should ask this question to everybody. How do you know? How do you know whether something is materially contamination? Some consciousness I experience because of material contamination, or is it the pure consciousness? So the one litmus test could be: is it a permanent thing or a temporary thing? This is a very, very powerful test. Just test with yourself. If I experience a sense of possessiveness towards a car, is it a permanent thing or a temporary thing? If it is permanent, then it may be because of pure consciousness. But if it is temporary, then it is certainly not pure consciousness, right? Um, uh, I experience today. I experience an affinity for iPhone. Which one is the latest one? 12. iPhone 12. Yesterday I was thinking about iPhone 11. Before that iPhone X. Before that iPhone maybe 9 or 8 something. Yeah, so many. So it is always changing. So maybe that is not that is not certainly not a trait of pure consciousness, because whatever is a trait of pure consciousness, it must be existing all the time. So this is Bhagavad Gita's um, perspective on consciousness, which is very, very interesting. Okay, next. Okay, now why are we doing this research? Well, if consciousness is such a difficult matter, so as we just now discussed that this matter makes us this study of consciousness makes us feel get a sense of satisfaction, and also our wisdom. Certainly, as you know, these days even great scientists are thinking about this topic. But Bhagavad Gita says that there is even more to it, that Bhagavad Gita says that this study of consciousness is actually the is actually, because it's study about ourselves, it will take us to our uh, real goal. Real goal means we naturally want to enhance our sense of happiness, and we want to be in our natural state, right? If we are in our natural state, we feel satisfied, we feel happy naturally. We don't need matter to make us happy, because we are not matter. So the goal of research of any endeavor, any of our activities should be this: that we want to go from contaminated consciousness to pure consciousness. I want to see who am I actually. Like we talk of identity crisis. Identity crisis means when I don't know who am I. I am what is my identity. So we are all in that state of identity crisis. So to know my identity, I have to do this study, that how do I go from my contaminated consciousness, which is always changing, always is very troubling, very baffling, but how do I go to pure consciousness, which is eternal, which gives me a sense of knowledge, which gives me a sense of existence and sense of happiness. So three things, that which exists always, which is eternal, and which is full of knowledge. It is the models are perfect, like the perfect models in physics, and also it is giving me extreme joy, extreme happiness. That so I'll just tell you some things from Bhagavad Gita. So one is, Krishna says, Yajnatva neha bhuyo nyaj natavim avashishyate. That what is that? Knowing which nothing further remains to be known. Basically, it's like getting the like in physics they often say, can I write an equation from which everything has come? So this is something of that sort, that one equation or one concept which I understand, then I can easily explain other concepts from there. And then it gives me a sense of happiness. The Krishna says, Machita matata prana bodhayanta parasparam katayantascha mam nityam tushyanti charamanti cha. That by these discussions, by this research, when we talk about consciousness, about Bhagavad Gita amongst ourselves, we naturally become happy. Tushyanti charamanti cha. We become very satisfied, and we become very happy when we do this study. Okay, so this is further. So Prabhupada says, when we are materially contaminated, we are called conditioned. So false consciousness is exhibited under the impression that I am the product of material nature. So says that material consciousness is characterized by this fact when we say consciousness is a product of matter. When we say consciousness is a product of matter, this is a very ignorant statement, and also this is a trait of false consciousness, or the contaminated consciousness, because pure consciousness is not a product of matter. Okay, so I think I will not read this. Let me stop here. It's quite 9:10 almost. Maybe if you have any questions, you can ask. Okay, there is one question from Adhiraj. He's asking, when one is born, is he or she at the purest state of consciousness? So the answer is, okay, when somebody is born, is he at the purest state of consciousness. So as we just saw, one definition of consciousness or one trait of consciousness as described by Bhagavad Gita is that consciousness is eternal, right? So it is not affected by somebody being born or dying, right? Whether my body is born or died, consciousness is not affected by that. So my pure consciousness is not affected by that. So if my consciousness is pure, then it will remain pure whether I'm born or dying. So that has nothing to do with the state of consciousness, right? So rather, somebody is materially conscious, he becomes perturbed by birth and death, right? As Krishna says in the second chapter, 13th verse, Kaumara, Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yavaram jara tatha dehantara prapti dhira satrana muhyati. So somebody who is in a pure state, he's not affected by birth and death or growing old or becoming young. So but a person who is in contaminated consciousness, he is only affected or she is only affected by that. So birth and death has nothing to do with the state of consciousness, whether it is pure or not pure.
But when I am born, how am I aware that I am born?
Material consciousness. Material consciousness is also consciousness, right? But it is always changing. When I am born, my consciousness is, oh, where is milk? Where is milk? When I grow a little bit more, when I'm born, I'm experiencing hunger for milk. I'm experiencing the sense of crying all the time. But when time passes, it changes. I experience my desire for getting new toys and desire to play with my parents, play with my brother. But when I grow even further, that changes. That experience completely changes. It becomes getting new motorcycle or things like that, right? So it is always changing. That is the trait of material consciousness. It is always changing. Yeah. So please ask questions. Yeah, so I think you can see here many nice perspectives on consciousness, which we saw from some modern scientists, some philosophers, some people who are working in AI and machine learning, and we also saw perspectives from Bhagavad Gita. And you see that those questions are being answered in very, very nice ways by all of these. So basically, this is the quality of a thinker, that the thinker asks questions and tries to seek answers for them. So this is something very impressive.
But the urge for toys arises from me seeing like flashy things and like sort of thinking that this will.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, no? That it is affected by the matter. So my material consciousness is affected by matter, but pure consciousness is not affected by matter. That's what we saw in one of these slides. So, so I think this gives a good food for thought to us, how we see things around us from this perspective. Right. Let's say now tomorrow, if Adhiraj goes to lab and he's working on some machine learning stuff, and he can ask this question, that is this pure consciousness or contaminated consciousness? Or he can ask this question, that who is experiencing, what is intelligence, what is driving the whole thing? Okay, I'll go to the next slide, which is actually, so is consciousness a product of matter? Let's argue on that. Let's bring different perspectives on that. Is consciousness a thing in itself, or is it a product of matter, that different neurons in the brain, they combine to give rise to some chemicals which appear like consciousness? And the next question is, do we need consciousness as a fundamental building block while explaining the universe? So this universe is made up of I don't know what are the fundamental building blocks. Okay, I can discuss that as well, how this notion of fundamental building blocks has evolved over time. Earlier, people used to think world is made up of air, water, ether, fire, the Greek philosophers. I'm telling about the English Western science. So then the Mendeleev gave the periodic table, that these many elements, and then that periodic table expanded and became today, I think, more than 120 elements. And then further people said, no, these elements are not most fundamental. There is something more fundamental. There are atoms, the protons, neutrons, electrons, which are making up these atoms. And then they further broke it up. They said, no, there are quarks, bosons, gluons, which are making up the world. So it means, what are the fundamental building blocks? And amongst all these fundamental building blocks, should we also need to consider consciousness as another fundamental building block, that to make the understanding of the universe complete? Or is it that the consciousness is made up of some of these fundamental building blocks? Maybe, which means consciousness can be reduced to some of those fundamental building blocks. Just like an atom of hydrogen can be reduced to a proton and a neutron, or just a proton. So how do consciousness and matter interact? Okay, consciousness is there, then how do they interact? Because science is not just about studying the building blocks, but also how do they interact and give rise to different observations which we see, right? So that is we can take up these topics in coming weeks. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I will stop recording now, and I would request if you can turn off